Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is there. That way, YouTube will keep showing you more stories like this. Now, let's begin. Every time I pass a McDonald's, my stomach still clenches. 3 years have passed since that day, but the smell of French fries still makes me nauseous. It was a terrifying and haunting experience, one I'll probably never forget. It happened when I was 17. I'm Maddie, and that day, Kate, Mia, and I went to McDonald's after school as usual. It was where we often went to gossip about school. It was July, and the California weather was terribly hot and humid. The store was quite empty, with only an old man reading a newspaper, a middle-aged couple, and our group. "What would you like to order?" The cashier's voice startled me. He was new. We had never seen him before. His service attitude wasn't as friendly as the previous female employee. We ordered as usual and sat down at our familiar table near the window. After a few stories, we realized the service time today was much longer. Usually, the food was ready in just 10 minutes. "Why is it taking so long?" Kate started to get restless. I glanced towards the counter. Through the gap in the kitchen counter, I saw the employee working alone. His movements were quite slow. Finally, after nearly 30 minutes, he brought our food out. "Sorry to keep you waiting. I wanted to make sure everything was special." We took our food, feeling uncomfortable, so we decided not to eat at the restaurant anymore. We took our food to Kate's car parked outside. I sat in the back seat and opened the bag of French fries. The familiar smell of grease and salt wafted up, but there was something else that made me pause. A strange, fishy smell that I couldn't immediately identify. "The fries taste a little different today, don't they?" Hearing me, Mia immediately stopped eating and sniffed her food carefully. Kate also opened her bag to check. I brought the bag closer to my nose. The smell was stronger, not like spoiled food, but something very indescribable. "Look," I pointed to the bottom of the bag. There was a wet, yellowish stain, unlike normal cooking oil. Mia reached in and picked up a fry. The liquid on it was very thick and viscous. Gross. I looked towards the restaurant. The employee was standing there watching us, and on his lips was an amused smile, as if he was waiting for this reaction. "Oh my God, he did something sick to our food," Kate suddenly blurted out. The air in the car seemed to freeze. A feeling of disgust rose from the depths of my stomach. Mia dropped the fry, frantically wiping her hands with a napkin. Kate immediately started the car and left McDonald's. After driving a few miles, I grabbed my phone to call the police, my heart rate suddenly skyrocketing. After reporting the incident, the dispatcher asked us to keep the food for verification steps and to return to the McDonald's restaurant to give our statements. Just as you suspected. The camera recorded this employee's unusual behavior. His name is Rick Morrison, 26 years old. We have arrested him. A feeling of relief mixed with disgust flooded over me. We were right, but this truth made everything even more horrifying. The test results came back the next morning. The liquid on the food was identified as human semen. I vomited as soon as I heard this news. 2 weeks later, we were called to court to testify. Through further investigation, the police discovered that Rick Morrison had worked at 3 different McDonald's branches within 2 years. At each location, there were complaints about his strange behavior towards young female customers, but because there was no concrete evidence, he had remained at large until now. Morrison was sentenced to 3 years in prison for endangering the public and lewd conduct. He was also banned from working in the food industry for life and had to register on the sex offender list. The McDonald's manager met with us privately to apologize. They said they would tighten their recruitment process and employee background checks. But for us, apologies and commitments could not erase that feeling of disgust and haunting. Now, every time I pass any McDonald's, I still remember that day. We almost became victims of a pervert. But what I remember most is Morrison's gaze on the day of the trial. There was no remorse at all, only anger at being caught. From that day, I learned that our instincts are often right. When something feels off, trust that feeling. And most importantly, always have the courage to speak up when necessary. Because perhaps, if we hadn't, how many other victims would have to go through the same thing? I'm Anna. I was 16 then, still thinking the world revolved around me. That evening was around July in Ohio. I had just finished my shift at a clothing store in the mall, feeling quite tired and hungry. I had to walk to a nearby McDonald's for dinner. The store was quite empty. I ordered a Big Mac combo, sat down at a table near the window, and started eating. But after only half, I was full. I sat scrolling on my phone for a bit. A sour, burnt smell began to waft, making me wrinkle my nose slightly. "Excuse me, miss. Could I have your leftover fries?" "I'm really hungry." I startled, looking up with an annoyed expression. A man in his 40s was standing by my table. He had a scraggly beard and long, matted hair. His tattered jacket had no zipper. His hand, with long, blackened nails, trembled as it reached closer. I looked him up and down, feeling nauseated by his body odor. At the time, I thought he would transmit infectious diseases. I refused bluntly. "No." I covered the fries with my arm. "Please stand a little further away from me." He froze. "But you're not eating them anymore. I'll take them home or do whatever I want. You should find a job instead of begging like this. You look disgusting." His face flushed. "You don't understand anything about my life," I replied with a sarcastic and condescending tone that I understood he was lazy. I even added contemptuous remarks about his appearance, about him daring to approach me in such a state. Unable to stand near that man any longer, I stood up and called out loudly. The store's security guard quickly approached. I pointed at the homeless man with a feigned look of fear, saying he was bothering me. The lies flowed easily. I fabricated that he asked for money and threatened me. The man hastily tried to explain, but I cut him off and added more serious accusations. He even cursed and threatened to follow me home. I saw his eyes widen in shock and despair, but instead of feeling guilty, I felt a sense of satisfaction. He was dragged by security towards the door. During the struggle, the man was shoved. He fell face down onto the street. A clear cracking sound echoed. He screamed in pain and sat up, blood flowing from his mouth. One hand covered his mouth, and on the other palm was his front tooth. I walked back into the store with a satisfied expression and a feeling of victory. A moment later, I walked home, a 20-minute walk through the quiet student neighborhood. As I passed a dark alley, something suddenly hit me hard on the head. Pain exploded, and I screamed loudly. When I turned around, I was surprised to see the beggar from earlier. In his hand was a rather large rock. His hateful gaze pierced deep into me without blinking. It was just him and me facing each other on the deserted street. That's when I was truly scared, wanting to run, but my feet felt nailed to the ground. He slowly approached. He began to talk about his past in a trembling voice. He also once had a small family and a comfortable life. But misfortune struck, causing his company to close, and his wife and children left. He lost everything within a few months. The man's voice was broken, each word causing pain as it was uttered. I shook my head, unable to say anything, only looking at him with horror. He suddenly roared, lunged, grabbed my shoulders, and shook me hard. "I have feelings too. I suffer too," he screamed, blood-tinged saliva splattering on my face. I sobbed uncontrollably and begged him for forgiveness. His grip tightened even more. "I deserve respect too. I'm human too." I pushed him away and fell backward. Without wasting a second, I sprang up, turned around, and ran at full speed. I didn't dare to look back. His screams echoed behind me, then faded away. I ran until I reached home. I rushed into my room, locked the door, and then slumped onto the floor, my whole body still trembling. I couldn't sleep that entire night. What he said kept echoing in my head. I'm human too. For the first time, I began to think about how cruel I had been. No one deserves to be treated like trash just because they are poor. Since that night, I no longer looked at homeless people with fear or contempt. I always carry a few spare bills, some leftover food to share. Not to atone for my sins, but to remind myself never to forget. A cold word can also leave a wound that never heals. There are stories you never want to have to tell again. But for the past 3 months, I haven't had a single night of peaceful sleep. I'm writing this story hoping it will make me feel better. It was late July and the Texas weather was stifling hot. My mom picked me up from school and stopped at McDonald's to buy dinner. "Nick, order whatever you like," Mom said as we walked into the restaurant. Standing in line, my eyes were still glued to the arcade game machine. When I heard my mom speak, I looked up and scanned the store for the menu. That's when I saw him. A man in his 30s stood 3 people away from us. He was very tall and thin. What caught my attention wasn't just his appearance, but his behavior. He kept muttering things, his eyes constantly darting around. "Mom, look at that man," I whispered, feeling that something was off. My mom looked in the direction I pointed and frowned. "Let's go somewhere else." Mom gently pulled my hand, but curiosity held me back. "I want a large meal." His voice started to get louder, his hand wildly pointing at the menu board above the counter. The cashier, a young girl probably only a few years older than me, tried to keep her voice calm. "Sir, could you be more specific about your order?" "I'm hungry. I need to eat now," he yelled, slamming his fist on the counter, making another customer's soda spill all over the floor. Everyone turned to look. Some customers had already left. I felt my heart pound, not from fear, but from excitement. This was my chance to do something and be a hero like in the movies. That crazy thought popped into my head, and I immediately acted. "Hey, what are you doing?" I stepped forward, my voice slightly shaky. "Nick, get back here now," my mom exclaimed in fright, but I ignored her. The man turned to look at me with bloodshot eyes. "You can't yell at her like that." This is a public place. I tried to make my voice sound calm. He was silent for a few seconds, looking me up and down. I thought I had convinced him. But then he laughed. "You little busybody," he said slowly, his right hand slowly reaching into his pocket and pulling out a long, sharp knife. That's when I realized I had made a terrible mistake. "You want to be a hero, huh?" He advanced closer, the distance between us just a few steps. The knife pointed straight at my chest. At that moment, everything happened at once. Customers' screams echoed throughout the restaurant. The cashier retreated behind the counter, her hand trembling as she pressed the alarm button. I stood frozen like a log. "Nick!" my mom yelled. I felt a strong pull dragging me back. In a flash, he swung the knife towards us and cut through the air. Mom pulled me and ran towards the exit, along with the other customers. I heard him yelling and cursing behind us. "You brat! I'll kill you!" Once in the parking lot, my mom immediately called the police. While waiting, I looked back through the restaurant's glass doors. He was still inside, waving the knife and yelling at the employees who had hidden in the back room. "The police will be here in 5 minutes. Are you okay?" my mom said, her trembling hand on my shoulder. I shook my head, although in reality, I was very nauseous. The feeling of excitement hadn't completely worn off, but it was starting to give way to fear and regret. I had almost died because of my foolish overconfidence. The police arrived and handled the situation professionally. 2 officers entered the restaurant, subdued him, and disarmed him. I heard him yelling and cursing even as he was being handcuffed. "Where's that kid?" he yelled as he was being led to the police car. An officer approached us to take our statements. I recounted the entire incident, my voice still slightly shaky. The officer carefully noted down every detail. "He has a history of violence and drug use. You shouldn't intervene in situations like that. Let adults and the police handle it," he said, looking at me with serious eyes. I nodded, feeling my face flush with shame. We were about to leave when the man was being put into the police car. He turned back. His eyes found me in the crowd and stopped. Then he smiled, but this time there was something more malicious, as if he was memorizing my face. He whispered, "Next time I'll disembowel you." A shiver immediately ran through me. I stood motionless, watching him being led away. But the image of his eyes and that smile haunted me for weeks afterward. Mom had to take me to see a psychologist for counseling. Later, I learned his name was James. He was convicted and sent to prison. I learned a profound lesson in my teenage years, that the world is not like the movies, and there isn't always a hero to save the day. Now, whenever my son acts too confident or eager to do the right thing, I tell him my old story. I don't tell it to scare him or instill fear, but to help him understand that courage doesn't mean acting recklessly. I'm a food delivery driver for the DoorDash brand, and I usually take late-night orders since it's quieter and the tips are better. That night, it was already 1 a.m. when an order came through from McDonald's. The name on it was Brad, the address was clear, and it wasn't too far. I started my car and cranked up some music to keep myself awake in the stillness of the night. As I got closer to the address, something felt off. The streets were way too quiet, and the flickering yellow streetlights made the darkness feel even heavier. Brad's house was at the very end of the street. The dim light from the lamp above his door barely cut through the shadows. I told myself I was just overthinking it, but standing in front of that door, this uneasy feeling crawled over me. I rang the bell and waited. The sound of the bell echoed, sharp and cold, like it was cutting through the darkness. A few seconds later, the door opened, and there he was. Brad. He was tall, kind of swaying, like he'd just woken up, or maybe had too much to drink. His eyes were bloodshot and sunken, with dark circles. His wrinkled shirt was covered in reddish-brown stains, some dried, some still fresh. This awful smell hit me, a mix of booze and something else, something rancid. It made me step back without even thinking. I handed over the bag of food, just wanting to get it over with and leave. But his eyes didn't let me go. They were cold and calculating, like he was sizing me up. After what felt like forever, he finally told me to bring the food inside. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed not to go into a stranger's house. But then he mentioned a big tip in this slow, raspy voice, and for a split second, I found myself considering it. In the end, I reluctantly stepped inside, telling myself I'd just drop off the food and get out of there. The scene inside stopped me in my tracks. The furniture was a mess. Broken wine bottles were scattered all over the filthy floor. The walls were covered in old, peeling wallpaper that revealed patches of gray concrete underneath. The smell inside was even worse, thick, putrid, and impossible to ignore. I set the bag down on a small table near the door, trying not to look too much or think too hard. I just wanted to grab the cash and leave. But then something at the back of the house caught my eye. The back door was wide open, leading to a small courtyard barely lit by the pale moonlight. 2 big black garbage bags were lying there, side by side, bulging like they were stuffed with something heavy. A cold breeze blew through, carrying this unmistakable stench, the smell of something rotting. One of the bags had a small tear in the corner, and sticking out of it was what looked like a piece of silvery gray fabric. Flies were swarming around the bags, drawn by the sickening smell of death. The stench wasn't just overwhelming. It felt like it was crawling into my throat, making me gag and struggle to breathe. I squinted and realized one of the bags was shaped like a curled-up body. From the torn corner, something hard and pointed poked out. Maybe an elbow, maybe a knee. The other bag was longer and slimmer, its lumpy, irregular lines making it clear that whatever was inside had been bent or cut to fit. I couldn't move. My feet were frozen to the spot. A numbness spread through my whole body. Every second, I was paralyzed as my mind filled with horrifying images. Every buzz of the flies, every gust of wind that made the bags shift slightly, hammered home the terrifying reality. I was standing in front of something worse than any nightmare I'd ever experienced. I wanted to look away, but my eyes were glued to those 2 black bags, completely frozen by the horror of it all. One thought shot through my mind. I needed to get out of there now. I turned to head for the front door, but Brad was already there, blocking my way. He had a long metal bar in his hand, and his eyes were wild, like a predator about to pounce on its prey. I couldn't say anything, didn't even have time to think. My survival instincts kicked in, and I turned and bolted for the car. Brad let out this hoarse scream and came charging after me with the metal bar. I ran as fast as I could, my heart pounding, gasping for air. By some miracle, I managed to yank open the car door, get inside, and lock it just before he got close. Brad slammed the metal bar against the window, his face twisted in a crazed rage. I was shaking so badly, but somehow managed to step on the gas and speed off, my eyes glued to the rearview mirror. He just stood there, watching me, until his figure disappeared into the darkness. I made it to a nearby gas station and pulled over, my hands still trembling as I called the police. The operator listened to my scrambled, broken story and promised to send someone to check out the house immediately. By the next morning, it was all over the local news. The police found 2 bodies, one of a man and another of a woman, in those garbage bags. The bodies were identified as a young couple, Mary and Jacob, who used to be Brad's neighbors. The investigation showed that Brad killed them because he was obsessed with their laughter and happiness. He envied their lives and couldn't handle it while drowning in loneliness and long-term depression. The police arrested Brad on the spot, and the mugshot they released later sent chills through me. His face was warped and terrifying. I had to go to the police station to give a statement. The whole time, I couldn't stop thinking about the stench of that house and the way Brad had looked at me. It felt like the air was being squeezed out of my lungs. That night wasn't just another delivery. It was a nightmare I'll be carrying with me for the rest of my life. My name is Charles, 29 years old. My wife Maddie and I have been married for over 4 years, and she is exactly the kind of person I was looking for. Beautiful and independent. Throughout the years we've been together, we have never had any loud arguments. One evening, I came home after a stressful day at work with a new project. As soon as I stepped through the door, the smell of food made my heart skip a beat. Maddie, I'm home. What is that delicious smell, darling? I quickly threw my coat and briefcase onto the sofa and rushed into the kitchen. Kebab! Awesome. Can you believe it? I was just thinking about it this afternoon. I was like a child excited to finally eat my favorite dish. Maddie smiled at me, holding out the dessert. I'm glad you like it. Let's dig in. The fatigue from a long day quickly disappeared. From that day on, Maddie gradually increased the frequency of making kebab for me. First once a week, then every day. Maddie, I'm about to get sick of the smell of this dish. Eating so much grilled food isn't good for you, you know. And how do you still have time to prepare this meal? Maddie looked at me with a somewhat awkward expression. Because it's your favorite dish. I really like it, but that was just a few weeks ago, darling. The next day, on my way home from work, I passed by a food truck selling fast food. A second later, I was startled and looked back in the rearview mirror. It was Maddie, and she seemed friendly and happy with the owner of the food truck. At that moment, I was just a bit curious, but I didn't suspect anything, and soon after, I forgot about it. One day, when I got home from work, I saw Maddie watching TV in the living room. I hurried over and hugged her from behind. I'm home, sweetheart. Maddie wrapped her arms around mine and smiled lightly. Maddie! Why? I leaned down to sniff her shirt. Why do you smell like kebab? My wife stood up quickly. Oh, I just went out to eat with Kaylee. Does the smell cling that much? Let me go change, and then we can go out for dinner. Seeing Maddie's awkwardness, I couldn't help but feel curious. On the way to the restaurant, I asked her again. You had plans with me, yet you still went to eat with Kaylee? What's going on? Does the restaurant we're going to have tiramisu on the dessert menu? Maddie immediately interrupted and changed the subject, not even looking me in the eye. I decided not to bring it up again for the moment, but I was sure Maddie was hiding something. As time went on, she became more distant and avoided making eye contact with me. There were no more joyful dinners, laughter, or words of affection. Maddie even spent a few nights out, and according to her, she stayed at Kaylee's house, and it happened more often. The second time I caught Maddie at the food truck, she wasn't just talking, she even followed the owner into the truck. I was frozen, coming up with hundreds of questions, and then answering them in every possible way, just to hold on to a bit of hope. When I got home, I waited for Maddie to return so we could have a clear conversation. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours passed, and she still hadn't come home. When I called, the phone went straight to voicemail. At that moment, I couldn't stay calm anymore. My mind was filled with all sorts of terrifying images. After waiting another 2 hours, my patience was completely gone. I rushed out of the house and ran to where the food truck had been, but it was gone. Like a madman, I ran up and down the street searching for the truck, calling Maddie hundreds of times, but I still couldn't reach her. I blamed myself for being so foolish, for leaving instead of confronting the situation and clearing things up right then and there. I was overwhelmed by despair, collapsed on the street, and before I knew it, the sky had already turned to dawn. The truck reappeared and parked in its usual spot on the street. I stumbled towards it, repeatedly shouting Maddie's name. "The food isn't ready to be served yet, sir," the owner of the truck said, smiling faintly. I rushed forward, grabbing his shirt tightly, and yelled, "Where is Maddie? Where is she?" But that bastard just looked at me and smiled without answering. "Maddie! Maddie! Where are you?" I searched for her, thinking there might be a secret room inside the truck. The owner of the truck didn't stop me, didn't shout at me. He just stood there, watching my every move, and smiled. In the kitchen area, I found jewelry and clothes that I was certain belonged to Maddie. The feeling of betrayal clouded my mind, and I couldn't control my actions. I rushed over and punched that bastard in the face. He laughed even harder when I did that. Exhausted and with my hands covered in red, I left in utter despair. For the next 3 days, Maddie disappeared, and I couldn't get in touch with her. I had reported to the police, and an investigation was launched with a search team looking for Maddie, while other officers kept a 24/7 watch on the truck owner. He continued to sell food with a bruised face as if nothing had happened, and there were no suspicious actions from him. My testimony, along with Maddie's belongings found in the kitchen, wasn't enough to convict him. How could a normal person disappear so mysteriously, leaving no trace or clues behind? Nearly a month after Maddie disappeared, that morning when the news broadcast reported, a serious food poisoning incident occurred with 28 people in Coral Gables, Miami. After being admitted to the hospital for treatment, all 28 individuals were diagnosed by doctors with blood parasitic infections. After testing the leftover food in their stomachs, the doctors were shocked to report the food they consumed contained human DNA. After gathering information from the patients and their families, they all stated that they had eaten kebab from a food truck on the street. About a month ago, at the same food truck, the mysterious disappearance of the young woman named Maddie occurred. I never thought a regular afternoon could flip into a total nightmare. Last summer, I was in Boston with my best friend Ray, his dad, and Ray's sister, Carly. We were heading to Fenway Park to catch a Red Sox game. Before the game, everyone decided to grab lunch at Popeyes. The place was packed, laughter everywhere, the smell of hot fried chicken in the air, and fans hyped up for the game. We sat down, ordered, and just soaked in the energy, totally unaware that things were about to take a dark turn. A guy walked in. Nothing really stood out about him, just an old t-shirt, jeans, and a worn-out baseball cap. But something about him felt off. He ordered his food and picked a seat in the corner, right where he had the best view of Carly. I didn't really pay much attention to him at first, until I noticed his eyes never left Carly. He was eating so slow, one bite at a time, like he was dragging it out just to keep staring at her. At first I thought maybe I was just overthinking it, but then Carly started looking uncomfortable too. She kept her head down, focused on her food, trying to avoid his gaze, but he didn't look away. 5 minutes passed, and he was still staring. No shame, no attempt to hide it. Ray and his dad didn't seem to notice, but that uneasy feeling in my gut kept getting worse. Carly got up, mumbling something about needing the bathroom. Instinctively, I glanced at the guy. Almost immediately, he stood up too. His tray of food was barely touched. He was following her. I got this weird chill, grabbed Ray's arm and muttered, "That guy just followed Carly into the bathroom. Did you see that?" Ray frowned for a second, then laughed it off. Maybe he just had to go too. But my gut was telling me something was off, and I was right. Minutes passed, then 10, then 15. Carly still hadn't come back. Ray's dad was starting to get annoyed. Where is she? Does she really need that much time? Ray and I exchanged a look. Neither of us said a word, but we both felt it. Something was wrong. We decided to check. The door to the women's bathroom was slightly open. We stopped outside, and Ray called Carly's name. No answer. A Popeyes employee, a woman, walked in to take a look. Then she turned back to us, looking confused. There's no one in there. No one? Carly was gone, and so was that guy. We bolted outside, scanning the parking lot. A silver truck peeled out way faster than normal. I caught a glimpse of someone in the back seat, but it was too far to tell if it was Carly. Ray's dad didn't waste a second. He called 911. The police showed up fast, but there wasn't much to go on. They checked the security cameras, but just our luck. The one behind Popeyes had been busted for days. No footage. 3 days went by. Still nothing. The police tracked down the truck's plates, but the owner had an accomplice and refused to say where Carly was being kept. Ray's dad was losing it, barely slept, kept blowing up the police's phones, checking out every sketchy place he could think of. Ray and I couldn't just sit around doing nothing. We went to the area where the truck was last spotted, asking people if they'd seen anything. A homeless guy remembered seeing Carly being forced into the truck. That gave the police a better idea of where to look. By the morning of day 4, the police found a phone tossed in an alley near Popeyes. It was Carly's. When they opened it, the last message she had typed out was, "He's standing right in front of the door. I'm scared." The police kept digging, tracking down a partial plate number a witness had remembered. Turns out, the truck belonged to a guy who had already done time for kidnapping a minor. He'd gotten out a few years ago. When the police raided this abandoned house, they didn't just find Carly. One of the walls in a dark room was covered in photos, not just of her, but of other girls. Some of the pictures were old, edges curled and faded, like they'd been there for years. A young officer flipped open a file on the desk, his face going dark. "We're dealing with a serial predator." Carly sat frozen in the corner, her eyes empty. But the thing that shook everyone the most was the girl lying next to her, still, lifeless, cold. One of the officers checked her wrist, then just shook his head. Carly stared at the body beside her, then whispered, "He said he'd come back." The police were in full force, hunting down the kidnapper, determined not to let him take another victim. Carly made it out, but she wasn't the same. Her eyes were always full of fear. She barely slept. The nightmares never stopped. She wasn't the carefree girl she used to be. And sometimes, even in a crowded place, she could still feel it. Someone watching her. But in the end, Carly was luckier than so many others. She was found. She got to go home. With the love and support around her, I believe she'll find a way to heal. Daniel Carter had been running a Popeyes in Louisiana for years. He still couldn't shake the madness of the 2019 chicken sandwich craze. People brawling, even killing each other over a damn sandwich. His job paid the bills, and life was all right. But he was getting real tired of the fast food grind and the mess it left behind. Come 2022, Popeyes was rolling out a new burger, and Daniel got an invite to a hush-hush tasting for upper management. He had a bad feeling about it, but the bonus was too good to pass up, so he signed on. The second he stepped into the testing facility, something felt off. The place looked like a rundown warehouse. Chipped paint, no sign out front, just sketchy all around. Inside, in a big testing room, about 10 other Popeyes managers were already waiting. A guy with slicked back hair and glasses stepped up and called himself Peter. Said he's from corporate and would be running the test. Before anything started, Peter rolled a video of the first batch of testers. The video started with a group of people trying the burger. At first, they raved about how good it tasted. But after a few minutes, things got weird. They started fiending for it like addicts. Some even hurt themselves just to get another bite. One guy straight up bit his own hand when there was no more burger left. By the end of the video, it was total chaos. People clawing at each other, fighting, screaming. The research team had to pump in anesthetic gas just to get things under control. Even after seeing that nightmare unfold, the managers still had to take a bite. They had signed an NDA, so backing out wasn't an option. The burger looked incredible, and there was something about the smell. It was almost hypnotic. The moment Daniel took a bite, it melted in his mouth. It was so damn good. It felt like the best thing he had ever eaten. But that bliss didn't last. A weird, creeping hunger started curling through his body. Each bite wasn't just satisfying, it messed with his head. He felt himself slipping, losing control, like he wasn't even the one making the choice to keep eating. Everything around him blurred, and the only thing on his mind was the burger sitting in front of him. In just a few minutes, the whole vibe in the room flipped. Eyes went wild. The people who had been keeping it together a second ago suddenly lunged at each other, scrambling for every last piece of the burger. They clawed and fought like starving animals. Daniel looked around, his head spinning. His hand shot out, grabbing what was left on the table. He couldn't stop himself. His hands turned shaky and clumsy, and the only thing left in his mind was that overwhelming, uncontrollable craving. The room exploded into chaos. The managers shoved, fought, scratched, anything to get more food. Daniel felt dizzy, realizing he was clawing at the burger on the table, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stop. A guy straight up punched his colleague in the face for just a tiny piece of the burger. Peter slammed the emergency button, and the room filled with anesthetic gas. Everything started fading. The last thing Daniel saw was people screaming and thrashing on the floor before everything went black. When he came to, he was strapped to a chair in a dark room. Peter strolled in, looking way too calm, and said the burger was a breakthrough product. But the formula still wasn't perfect. He explained that a special additive in the burger messed with the part of the brain that controls hunger, making people obsessed with food. Daniel asked him why the hell he'd create something so dangerous. Peter just smiled. Why do you think the 2019 chicken sandwich craze had people fighting? That was a test run, and it brought in insane sales. Peter was completely smug about trying to create a truly addictive product, something that would force customers to keep coming back for more. Peter wasn't just some marketing guy. He had studied human behavior and had even been involved in experiments on the power of addiction. Peter placed another burger in front of Daniel, saying the formula had been tweaked and he was the only one who could test it. If he ate it, he could become part of the new research and get anything he wanted. As Peter stepped out of the room, Daniel spotted a small key on the table. He cut himself free and bolted. On his way out, he passed several rooms where previous test subjects were locked up, screaming and begging for more food. Daniel managed to escape the facility. But once he got home, the taste of the burger wouldn't leave his mind. He knew he was being manipulated, but the craving refused to let go. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his co-workers from the test room screaming, reaching out for him. The hunger never faded. In fact, it got stronger with each passing day. The faces of the test subjects, Their bruised and desperate expressions kept flashing in his mind. When he opened the fridge, his eyes landed on the simple, ordinary food inside. But no, it wasn't enough. For a split second, he swore he saw the burger's silhouette right in front of him, calling to him, impossible to ignore. One night, a package showed up from Popeyes. Inside was a brand new burger and a note. A taste you can't resist. Eat it. Daniel stood there, torn between taking a bite or getting rid of it for good. I never thought a regular lunchtime at Subway could turn into a nightmare that would haunt me for the rest of my life. That day, I took my 6-year-old son, Ricky, to have lunch. Subway was right on the corner near his school, a small shop with the smell of toasted bread, fresh vegetables, and melted cheese. Ricky happily ran to an empty table by the window, his small feet swinging as he sat in the chair. I went to the counter, ordered 2 sandwiches, just like usual deli meats, extra mayonnaise, lightly toasted bread. When I came back, the boy was busy drawing something with a box of crayons and a fresh stack of paper. I paused for a moment. "Where did you get that?" Ricky looked up with innocent blue eyes. "The man just gave it to me. He said I should draw a lot." I frowned, glancing around the shop. There was no one of particular note. A few men in light-colored suits, an older woman eating soup, a Subway worker fiddling with the card machine. Maybe one of the staff gave it to him. I brushed off the brief unease. We started our lunch. Ricky ate quickly and then returned to his drawing. The boy happily exclaimed when he finished and showed me the drawing. Suddenly, I felt an inexplicable shiver. On the paper was a drawing of a tall, thin man, bald with a few long strands of hair, his empty eyes like 2 dark holes. His neck was unusually long, and his hand was reaching out, holding something small toward the front. "Who is this person?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Ricky happily replied, "He's the one who gave me the crayons." For some reason, I felt uneasy about his answer. "Did you thank him?" Ricky nodded, and I reluctantly smiled. I glanced at the drawing again, and the figure made me feel uneasy and suspicious. Around 6 p.m. we arrived home, the quiet space broken only by the ticking clock on the wall. I let Ricky play on his own while I cleaned up and prepared dinner in the kitchen. The boy was watching his favorite show. The cheerful sounds from the TV and Ricky's delighted laughter gave me a sense of peace. But today felt different. The living room was eerily silent. Ricky wasn't there. I called out, and his voice answered from upstairs. I pushed open his door and found Ricky still messing with the stack of paper and crayons. The focused look on his face made me chuckle. I let him draw and went back to the kitchen to continue cooking. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out, tearing through the silence of the house. I froze, my heart pounding, a chill running down my spine. My hands shook uncontrollably as I grabbed the edge of the chair, my mind empty for a second before panic truly set in. "Ricky!" I screamed, my voice cracking. I ran up the stairs, my trembling hand fumbling for the doorknob to Ricky's room. It flew open under the force of my frantic push. The boy was curled up on the floor, a wound on his shoulder soaking his shirt with blood. The gun lay next to his hand. Everything became a blur. I pressed my hands to the wound to stop the bleeding while calling the police and emergency services. I kept praying to God to save Ricky. The police arrived a few minutes after I made the call. They checked around the house, finding no signs of a break-in. There was nothing unusual in Ricky's room, no fingerprints besides his own. The police continued their investigation. Fortunately, the wound wasn't too severe, and Ricky recovered after a week in the hospital. I didn't rush to ask about it. wanting to let him calm down first. After we returned from the hospital, Ricky started showing strange behavior. He no longer greeted me cheerfully every morning, no longer hugged me when I got home from work, and didn't want to hear bedtime stories. He just silently withdrew into his own world, one I couldn't reach. One night, I stood in front of Ricky's door, hesitating for a few seconds before gently pushing the door open. The nightlight cast a shadow of Ricky on the wall. He was sitting on the bed, curled up, hugging his knees, staring blankly into the space in front of him. "Ricky?" I called softly, but he didn't respond, didn't turn around. I walked closer. "Can't you sleep?" This time, Ricky slowly turned to face me, his empty eyes. "He's here," Ricky whispered. "Who?" My body stiffened. Ricky didn't answer, pulling the blanket tightly over his head and lying down, curling up as though trying to shield himself from the world. I could only stand there watching my son, and started crying. In the following days, Ricky no longer enjoyed watching his favorite cartoons. He didn't draw, although the box of crayons and the stack of paper were still on the table. I wanted to help him, wanted to understand what had happened. Sitting next to his bed, I gently asked, "Ricky, why did you do that?" He stared at me for a long time before looking down. He said there's only one bullet. He wants me to send it to Mom for him. His answer made me go numb. I couldn't breathe. My whole body trembled, and a cold fear crept into my veins. Who was he? What kind of bastard would do this to a child? What did he want from me? I quickly looked around the room. The drawing paper and crayons were still there. I picked up the nearest drawing, my mind spinning as I saw what was on the paper. It was still the bald man with empty eyes, but this time, he was standing next to my bed, leaning down, whispering into my ear as I slept. His hand was offering a small bullet. My heart hammered as if trying to escape my chest. In that moment, I remembered a memory I had tried to forget for years. The image of the tall, thin, bald man with the empty eyes had appeared in my childhood dreams. I had seen him standing still by my bedroom window when I was little, but I always thought it was just a meaningless childhood nightmare. I never thought he would return, and this time, his target was Ricky. Unable to bear it any longer, I decided we had to leave. We moved to another city, hoping the distance would protect Ricky from the frightening memories. Ricky began seeing a therapist for treatment. During therapy sessions, Ricky slowly revealed more terrifying details about the bald man. Once, he said, "He says he will never let us go." Every night, I lay awake fearing he would find us. No matter how far we moved, it felt like it was never truly over. And perhaps it will never end. I worked the night shift at a Subway, a small shop next to a gas station, where people stopped in a hurry on their way home. The smell of toasted bread, fresh vegetables, and deli meats mixed with the familiar greasy air of the kitchen. The fluorescent lights on the ceiling emitted a cold, harsh glow, reflecting off the glass counter full of bacon and sliced cheese. He started showing up about 2 weeks ago. A middle-aged man wearing a wrinkled shirt, his brown hair thin and greasy. He didn't cause trouble, just ordered a regular beef sandwich with extra mayonnaise. But what bothered me was his gaze. Every time I stood behind the counter, he stared at me. Not the casual glance of a customer, but a persistent, probing look. When I wrapped the sandwich, he asked me what my name was. When he paid, his hand lingered on mine longer than necessary. The next time he came back, still with that look. This time he complimented me, saying I was pretty. He asked if I wanted to go out after work. I smiled politely and declined. but he didn't stop. One night he called the shop, his voice deep and raspy. "Is this Glenda?" I froze. He knew my name. He asked where I lived. I hung up. I told my manager, but there wasn't much to be done about it. "Just a weird customer, don't worry." After that, he disappeared. I felt relieved, but that feeling didn't last long. One Friday night, I finished my shift at 11 p.m. It was colder than usual. The subway glass door reflected my pale face under the dim lights of the parking lot. I took off my apron, adjusted my messy hair before stepping outside. My brother, Mason, always told me to be more careful. He didn't like me working the night shift alone. "Guys like him could be following you, Glenda. If anything happens, call me." Mason had picked me up many times, especially after I told him about the creepy customer. He didn't like the way I shrugged it off when I talked about him, but I always thought Mason was overreacting. That night, I told Mason I could go home on my own. But just 10 minutes later, I wished I had listened to him. Near the exit, a figure stood under a streetlight. I froze. The person was dressed as a clown. A large, baggy red and white striped suit, a curly wig, and a face painted white with a bright red smile stretched unnaturally wide. The clown held out a red balloon to me, swaying lightly in the wind. I didn't move, not knowing how to react. The clown said nothing, just brought the balloon closer. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my chest. This had to be a joke, right? Someone hired a clown to mess with me? I reached out slowly, took the balloon. As soon as I grabbed it, he turned and walked away, quickly disappearing into the darkness. The balloon felt different, like it was heavier. I didn't think much of it, turning back toward my car. Suddenly there was a loud pop. Bang! I jumped, the string of the balloon slipping from my hand. In an instant, a puff of white smoke shot out from the torn balloon, swirling into a thick cloud right in front of me. I gasped in shock, and immediately, the sharp chemical scent hit my nose, making my throat burn and tighten. A pungent odor overwhelmed all my senses, causing my stomach to twist. The more I coughed, the more white dust filled my mouth, my lungs. I staggered, my legs losing strength, and everything in front of me blurred. My throat felt dry, my heart pounded uncontrollably, out of rhythm. My ears rang, and all I could hear was the sound of my own labored breathing, desperate, as if I were drowning. Heavy footsteps pounded behind me. Darkness rushed toward me. He pressed on me. I heard his heavy breathing right next to my ear. "I've been waiting a long time for this, Glenda." I struggled, but my limbs were weak. A loud yell rang out. Footsteps rushed forward, and his body was yanked away from me. I blinked, trying to regain my senses. Mason, my brother, stood there, his fists clenched, breathing heavily. The man crawled to his feet, but Mason was quicker. Another punch, this time harder, enough to knock him to the ground. He cursed and groaned, holding his face. The police arrived, and when the lights flashed on his face, I saw him clearly. The white paint on his face had smeared from sweat, revealing pale skin and greasy brown hair. It was none other than the regular customer at Subway. I froze. A cold shiver ran down my spine as I realized the truth. He had always been there, watching me, waiting. I saw Mason say something to the police, but my ears were ringing. He was arrested on the spot, and Mason took me to the hospital. After that, I quit my job at Subway. I still thought about him, regretting not listening to Mason. I wondered how long he had been planning this. How many days had he been watching me? If Mason hadn't shown up, what would have happened? I remembered his face when he handed me the red balloon. It was the smile of someone, who knew he was about to get exactly what he wanted. The traffic light turned green. I drove off, trying not to think about what had just happened. By chance, I glanced at the back seat through the rearview mirror, and there it was, a red balloon, lying there, rolling on the seat. I don't know when it got there. I am Elaine, 32 years old, and a busy single mother with a 7-year-old daughter, Mia. I'm happy with my current life. My career is on the rise, so I'm very busy, but financially, I'm comfortable. Mia is a well-behaved, thoughtful, and incredibly warm-hearted little girl. I plan to work hard for another 7 or 10 years, and then retire early to live a happy life with my daughter. I know Mia feels sad because she doesn't get much attention from me, but she has never complained or blamed me. She always gets high grades, behaves appropriately, and takes care of herself without me needing to remind her. Thank you, Mia. Thank you for being there and walking this journey with me. I hugged my daughter tightly and broke down in tears. I've really missed you so much, I whispered. Mom, I'm still here, Mia asked, causing me to startle. What I mean is, I really miss you when I'm at work. My daughter and I don't sleep apart. Having her by my side makes me feel more at ease and helps me sleep much better. One morning, on the way to take Mia to school, I gave her $50. Sweetheart, I have a late meeting today, so I won't be able to make dinner like I promised. I'm sorry. Mia looked at me and smiled softly. This is money for my dinner, right, Mom? She took the money. I'll go to Chick-fil-A, and I'll invite my friends to join me. I'll wait for you to come there. Chick-fil-A, I muttered, stunned. Remember what I told you, and call me if anything comes up, I reminded my daughter before saying goodbye at the school gate. Mia also likes Chick-fil-A, which makes me feel closer to her and love her even more. That evening, I picked up Mia at 9 o'clock, by which time the store was about to close. I'm so sorry. You've been waiting a long time, haven't you? It's okay. I had a great time. My little girl always smiles like that. Who did you have dinner with? Bethany or Zana? Those two didn't come, Mom. I made a new friend. She's very beautiful. Is that so? She had eyes like you, Mom? I smiled at Mia. What's your new friend's name? She didn't introduce herself, and I forgot to ask. But she promised she would visit me next time. Seeing my daughter's happiness made me feel more at ease as well. The next morning, I had plenty of time, so I cooked breakfast for Mia. As I was preparing a little salad, I heard my daughter talking. Do you like this egg dish too? My mom cooks it really well, right? Mia, I called my daughter. Who are you talking to? Carrying the plate of salad to the dining table, I saw my daughter sitting alone. My friend, she said the eggs you made are really delicious. Your friend? Where is she? Why did she come to our house so early? I asked, quite puzzled. She just left, Mom, Mia said cheerfully, then continued eating her breakfast. I didn't ask her any more questions, quickly finished my meal, and got ready to go to work. But gradually, I realized that the friend Mia was talking about was someone only she could perceive. One day, when I picked Mia up from school, her teacher kindly asked to speak with me privately. Mia has been showing signs of distraction lately. She doesn't focus and often talks to herself, just so you know. I was very surprised. I looked over at Mia, who was waiting in the distance. She was indeed smiling and laughing, but she was all alone. I thanked the teacher and promised to keep a closer eye on Mia's situation. I didn't rush to ask Mia, but silently observed her instead. In the evening, when I returned to the bedroom, Mia was sitting on the bed with a few dolls. She held one up, smiled, and whispered, "Dash, do you like it?" I tapped lightly on the door so I wouldn't startle her. "Aren't you asleep yet?" "Mom, she's here. She said she wants to visit you." I shuddered, froze in place, and quickly glanced around the room. "Dash, Mia, what are you talking about?" "She's here." Mia jumped up and pointed towards me. "Dash, right next to you." "Mia, stop it right now," I shouted, feeling panicked and raising my voice a little. After a few seconds to calm down, I gently asked, "Dash, what's her name, Mia?" "Her name is Mia too. She looks just like you, Mom." I went silent, and after a few minutes of trying to calm myself, I helped Mia get ready for bed. After Mia had fallen into a deep sleep, I rushed to the closet, grabbed the Ouija board, and asked myself, "Mia is still in this house, right?" The answer left me stunned, and I burst into tears. So my daughter has still existed all this time. She is the Mia I gave birth to, but lost when she was 5. The girl I have now, with a name and appearance so similar, I have adopted as my daughter. I hugged myself tightly, a mix of longing and pain flooding over me, unsure if I was strong enough to face this truth. But now, I know I must protect and love both children, the one in my heart and one in my arms.